All right. Welcome to Halitics. So glad to be with you today. It is a Friday free-for-all, and I'm especially excited because my friend Ed Fischman, he is with the Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee, is with us. Ed, how are you today?
Doing okay.
And let me make clear, I want to make this clear, and you can too if you want. Ed is speaking for himself. He is fine being identified as the MCDCC treasurer, and I think that's great that you were elected. This is elected office. Ed won the election, so congratulations to you, and also that you have this position as treasurer. That's very, I think that's really cool. So good job, man.
Yeah, thanks. Working in the party is a strange gig for me, but it's what we came up with. One of the things we came up with when we started our revolution locally, and we elected a few people to the Central Committee early on. They've all moved on, and I got elected 3 years ago.
Well, when you mention our revolution, Ed and I think maybe first met as activists in that organization originally founded by Bernie Sanders in the wake of his just barely failed attempt to become the Democratic nominee and ultimately, hopefully, president in 2016. Ed and I worked together to build that chapter, and I think we did a good job. We worked well together, and we both moved on to different activities. But since you brought it up, in terms of the Dem enter strategy, which both of us were, I think, gung-ho about, that is enter the party with progressives, right, and try to move it to the left the way Bernie was trying. I've soured on that strategy. You know that. We've talked about this. I don't think it's worked. I certainly recognize that I believed in it. I urged it. I pushed it. But I don't think it's been a success. Tell us how you feel at this point.
I think we still have a lot of internecine conflict in the party. In Nevada, that strategy was wildly successful. That Bernie folks took over the party and in an election, and then the for want of a better word, the Clinton folks, just ripped everything, literally the guts out of the party. They took the computers and everything with them, and left no infrastructure for the Bernie folks to work with. We haven't. I don't want to understate the successes we have had. We have Jane Klebb, who was, a leading figure in the Bernie election campaign and in our revolution on the board. And she's a DNC vice chair. And Ken Martin himself came out of, who's now the current chair in the Democratic Party, came out of the Wellstone orbit. And so there are leftists in places, but there's a limit to what that party infrastructure can do. It's really electeds that drive policy, and we've had limited success there. Some successes, but we've got a long way to go.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ed. I think that's a fair characterization. I don't even know if I would use limited, but I'm not going to push back on it at all. That's fair for you to say. I do appreciate it. One of the, I guess, positive notes, at least in this moment, is this is the first Halitics I've done in since March, in which I'm not leading with the death count from Gaza. There is a ceasefire in place. It's unclear how long it will last, how precarious it is, but at least for now, the news from the Middle East is better than it's been. I'll put it that way. Palestinians begin journey to Gaza's north. This is from, of course, The Guardian. There you can see it. As Israel says, ceasefire now in effect. There's been some real bellicose words out of Netanyahu. I think, would you agree, let me phrase it this way, Ed, that ceasefire will remain in effect only so long as Trump keeps his foot on Netanyahu's throat?
I think that's 100% accurate. This moment is, for me, it's wild. I don't love having Trump as president, and somebody who's as corrupt as he is, and as in bed with the Saudis and the Qataris for financial reasons. They're funneling hundreds of millions and even billions towards him and his family. And yet that seems to have been what happened here, that those relationships paid off in a weird and perverse way. But Trump got really upset about the attack on the Qatar, campus there where they were meeting for the peace talks, and there was some allegations on the left. Brian Grimm at The Intercept, was accusing Trump of being complicit in it, and that maybe it was even a trap for Hamas. I think events since then proved that wasn't the case, and I think Netanyahu stepped too far, and in terms of Trump's personal financial interests, and he's been pushed back on, and so I think you're right. There you go. Yeah, I think you're right that it's really down to Trump and this weird, corrupt circle around that he's enmeshed in that has brought Netanyahu to heel here.
Yeah, sorry, I pushed you off screen there for a second, Ed. Just trying to get a headline up here from the New York Times that kind of illustrates your point exactly. How fury over Israel's Qatar attack pushed Netanyahu on Gaza, the fury there of Trump. I'm reluctant to really give Trump anything but the most kind of cursory or brief credit. I kind of look at, certainly this could have happened months ago. This could have happened years ago, and it didn't. Do you agree with something I said yesterday, that the fact that Trump gets any credit at all now really reflects a massive failing on the part of the Democratic Party, because it did not, the leaders of the Democratic Party, specifically Harris Biden, when they had an opportunity to use the obvious power of the United States to leverage whatever it wants from Israel, they failed to do that.
I think it's a little more complicated than that. Yes, indeed, they let us down in terms of what they allowed to happen, and by funding it and giving weapons to Israel and giving some cover in the United Nations, but they had limited influence on Bibi Netanyahu, and Trump has a lot more, and it's because of the personal connections and the corruption that exists there, which Biden and Harris did not participate in. We would say to their credit, but Bibi was aimed at taking them down. So he was not going to really respond to pressure from them, I think.
Was the pressure ever put, though? But to be fair, Ed, they didn't really put any pressure on him, right?
There was absolutely not. Yeah, 100%. They let us, as Democrats, I think that we would have wanted to see something different from them. I don't know that would have made much difference in what happened in Gaza.
Are you? And I really appreciate, again, you're coming on board here on Halitics. By the way, join us at 240-242-5646. I am taking calls. Subscribe if you haven't yet done so. We are seeing, Ed, very slow, but also very steady growth in the subscription. So I am pleased to that extent that there continues to be a trickle of new subscribers, if not on a daily basis, certainly on a weekly basis. So we do appreciate that. And we're also, of course, glad to have Ed with us. So Ed, and speaking for himself, not for his the group he represents. Nope. He does not represent.
And I do not represent. I can hopefully shed some light on some things within the committee, but I'm not representing the committee. I'm just speaking for myself.
This is from the Jerusalem Post. I just want to share this. I thought this was a pretty interesting little cover that one of my, I think it's fair to call him MAGA. If you're listening and you don't like being called MAGA, you know who you are. Call in and tell me why. Tell me I'm wrong. But I think you have pretty much identified yourself with the Trump movement. He shared this with us, Ed. And again, this goes to, I think, if you're a Democrat, you got to be worried if Trump can sort of quasi present himself as the peace president. That's going to hurt your team in the midterms, I believe.
I think it's too soon to first to see how this plays out in Gaza. We've seen ceasefires before. I mean, and this has happened. We're talking about almost 20 years now since Hamas took over there, and Israel pulled out. So there's been no shortage of ceasefires and return to violence. So we'll see if this holds. I weirdly, I do think this sort of corrupt circle that with the Saudis and Qataris and Trump and Bibi will creates a new dynamic that we haven't seen there before. And that may make it hold, which is, wonderful, chef's kiss. But not what we want to see generally in terms of leadership in the world. I don't know how that will, how voters will respond to that. Obviously, Trump will not be on the ballot. And I think Republicans will find it hard to embrace an agenda that's a little tough on Israel. So I don't know that Democrats are going to be pushing for a Palestinian state in ways that the Republicans will not. So I don't even want to begin to predict how this is, the politics of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think bottom line is kind of what you said, or at least I gleaned from your comment there, Ed. Cautious optimism, right? This could work out. It does feel a little bit more to me. This feels like it could be a little bit longer lasting, maybe not permanent. Obviously, nothing's permanent, but longer lasting than what we saw in March, where it was so clear Netanyahu was chafing at the bit to just go back and kill as many Palestinians as he could. It does appear now there is a bit of a leash around his neck. That said, he did give a very bellicose speech indicating that this could end at any time.
Right. No, I mean, my optimism is limited, very guarded, but I'm really hopeful. I mean, this has obviously been the most horrific war that any of us have witnessed in our lifetimes, and hopefully it's come to an end.
All right, let me get you on. This is kind of, I asked Ed what really triggered the invitation to Ed, and I was very, very pleased he came on board, is that your, the MCDCC, let me put it that way, is, the kind of the organization that how would you describe it? You're the central organizing group for the Montgomery County, Maryland Democratic Party. Is that fair to say? Yeah,
that is fair to say. We're when we did Dementer, I think we had thoughts of, doing platforms and conventions and things like that, which we don't do. We don't do policy, for better or worse. And I'm not sure where I stand on that. Originally, I would have said worse. We aren't elected to do policy, so there aren't debates about policy when we're on the ballot in the primary. So I think it's probably for the best. But we do represent the state party locally, and when there are, every 2 years we're out there coordinating with a coordinated campaign, canvassing efforts, and then at the polls, and then year round we're representing the party at events. So we'll be helping out with the fun run, the District 15 fun run this weekend. There's Potomac Day as well, and countless events like that almost every weekend.
Well, I put on the screen this invitation to Michigan U.S. Senator Elissa Slotkin, and I have a lot of problems with it. We're going to delve into it, how this occurred, whether MCDCC was involved, and to what extent in the invitation, and whether how you feel about it versus how I do. But I wanted to just explore for a moment something you said about policy, and I understand obviously the electeds will do what they do, whether they act based on their deep-seated values, whether they act based on what they believe their constituents want, or whether they act based on what their donors want and what they fear could happen to them, what kind of reprisals might be taken against them if they don't do what the billionaire class wants.
I would guess it's a different mix for each elected. But yeah.
Fair enough. Fair. I think we would agree. But that said, shouldn't the party act as kind of a guardrail on either side, where Because if the MCDCC or some central organization doesn't set policies or guidelines or something, then what does it even mean to be a Democrat?
So we get that question a lot. What do Democrats stand for? We can't define that. I think each Democrat defines for themselves where they stand. And you want to hold Democrats generally to some principles, but there isn't a party control. It's the old Will Rogers line. I belong to no organized party. I'm a Democrat. But that's also true for the Republican Party too. And I think largely this is a result of Citizens United. The backroom politics that used to exist doesn't anymore. And at least it doesn't involve the party. So there isn't a whole lot of control, even at the top leadership. Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries have limited control over their caucuses.
Well, and I would argue that based on their statements, their votes, they have limited morality as well. I mean, they seem to have no fixed principles that I can glean. Am I wrong? Is that unfair?
So given how we've identified me as the NCDCC treasurer, I can't speak. And we've had this.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, Ed. It's just
can't really speak ill. I mean, I have a flavor of Democrat that I prefer, and neither of those people fit that definition. We've had actually Hakeem Jeffries, this is before my time with the Central Committee, as a speaker at one of our events. We used to do two events, one in the fall, which honored the volunteers, and then we had a big spring gala. And after I first got involved with our revolution, I attended a few of these, and Jeffries was at one of them speaking at the spring gala. We're going to get into this about Slotkin. Jeffries was invited because he was an up-and-coming Democrat and was clear that he was kind of on a path to the speakership. We don't make. I should be careful. Like, I don't know what the calculus was that was picking Jeffries because I wasn't inside. You're going to ask about Slotkin. I can tell you that there wasn't a whole lot of calculus. She's well known and hopefully a decent draw.
Well, let me ask you then about Slotkin.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, because I have thoughts about Jeffries and Schumer, and I understand you made a comment about the flavor of Democrat, and obviously there are 31 flavors because the central committees of both parties no longer really act as guardrails. So candidates can pretty much, at least when it comes, it's interesting because we look at the party, at least I do, from the issues that are most important to me: war, economic justice issues, and the party's all over the place. But when it comes to the cultural issues, and I'm thinking specifically about choice, there actually isn't a lot of variety, right, in the parties.
Right. No, it's certainly actually less than there used to be. There used to be, the Bob Caseys of the world who were anti-choice, and it's a given now that you don't run in the Democratic Party if you're not fully pro-choice, and a lot of the other cultural issues I think were pretty much understood that if you're a Democrat, you're for LGBTQ rights. You're certainly for greater civil rights for African Americans and economic justice for them, and that's a place where actually Slotkin really does reach out and speak to me, and I think you, in ways that would be unexpected. She's been really strong with an economic message since she first got elected, and after this last election, she's come out with a platform that's really compelling.
So you're talking about economic issues. So give me an example. Has she come out as and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Ed. I'm really just curious. Has she come out as a sponsor or co-sponsor of Medicare for All?
I haven't seen that, and I would be very surprised. But she's a staunch defender of the ACA. But her economic platform is more about creating jobs in industry and supporting farmers in ways that we haven't, and tradespeople around the country, and just filling a void that was, has been.
I did that again. Sorry, Ed. I'm having trouble with my maximizing windows. When I do that, it blocks you. I'm not sending any messages. That's too. Well, I did look it up. I just want to show you real quick because, to me I hope the jobs issues are good. I don't know where she stands on that. I assume she's not. And again, these are assumptions, not for the free trade that we saw in the past characterize much of Democratic policy, and which has been very, very harmful. This is an old headline. When she was in, I guess, Congress, Slotkin rejects Medicare for all, supports public buy-in option. I'll see if I can find something more recent, but there does not appear to be. So I guess she has, at this point, not joined Bernie in that endeavor.
She was part of the Problem Solvers Caucus, New Democrats. I mean, she's one of the most conservative Democrats in the House and now in the Senate. There's no illusions of that. But
so what's the theory? So you're saying just because she's up and coming, did the committee issue the invitation, or did it come from someone else?
It did come from someone else. But so we had a gala schedule, or we've been using the North Bethesda Marriott, which is also the Montgomery County Conference Center, is owned by the county, and we always felt that was the appropriate venue for this event. Because it is a county property and the only one really that was suitable.
It's at the Hilton this time.
Yeah. Okay, so we didn't know that there was a brewing controversy between a local union, Local 25 of Unite Here, and the Marriott there, which it's a franchisee. So it's not under Marriott control, but they run there's a franchisee that runs the facility on a contract with the county. And a year ago, that contract was up for renewal, and the union wanted the county executive to make sure that there was a labor peace provision included in there so that they could get inside to talk to and hopefully unionize there. For whatever reason, the final contract that was signed did not include that. I don't know if the county executive even really pushed it, or whether maybe Marriott just put their foot down and said they would walk away. Whatever reason, that's the contract that came out, and the union was very displeased. And right after we signed our contract for this year's gala, the union announced a call for boycott of the facility. So it became untenable for us to go forward with the gala there. So the council is now passing legislation that would fix that issue, require these provisions. So the future county executives in negotiating these kind of things won't have room to maneuver, and anyone signing a deal with the county knows going in that's what they're going to have. But it doesn't affect the Marriott now. So we had to move our event, and we reached out to electeds hoping for support on this whole issue generally. And what we got back was one of the local legislators came back with, well, I can get you. We can't help you in terms of clearing the mess up with Marriott, but I can get you a pretty good speaker.
I just want to get something clear about Marriott. Are they not? Is that not a union shop? I thought the hotel workers there are still unionized, or is that not the case?
Not there.
Gotcha.
Marriott typically, as far as I know, most of the Marriott facilities are franchised, and so it's not.
So it's a hotel by hotel basis.
Right.
And the one that we're talking about here on Rockville Pike, for those familiar with this region, that one does not have a unionized workforce.
Correct.
And that's what caused the brouhaha, which led to the movement from Marriott to Hilton.
Yeah. I think the local was hoping that creating this dynamic might put pressure on the owners there, the operators there for Marriott, in ways that wouldn't happen anywhere else. But it didn't work.
Well, I guess in the end it worked because the legislation was passed. So
true.
But that legislation doesn't force Marriott or this particular Marriott to unionize.
They've got a 10-year contract, but in 9 years they will have to, if they want to renew,
if they want to have any business dealings with the county, they'll have to. So Ed, I understand Elissa Slotkin, U.S. Senator, relatively well known, but I mean, I'm not trying to like come down on you, and it's not just your decision, but we have a Democratic base that is so disgusted with Israel, so disgusted with the support, virtually unqualified support that has been offered to that genocidal country for years and years. And Elissa Slotkin, I can't say she's the worst, but she takes AIPAC funds. She has not been in any way a champion of a ceasefire or of stopping the killing. She said she would have voted to block some weapon sales, but she didn't actually do that. Mm-hmm. Am I wrong? This was, I mean, I think it feels like you guys, not you, the party is almost spitting in the face of its voters, saying we care more about billionaire Zionists, hedge fund managers like Bill Ackman, than we do about voters.
I'll say this. I looked at her Wikipedia page. I studied it before I came on here, which is way more than I think anyone else on the Central Committee did in picking her and agreeing to bring her in. So I don't want to overstate, this was a judgment of, we were offered the services of a really, well-known. I mean, I just saw a poll last week actually that listed her as the second most popular Democrat and maybe the second most popular politician in the country in terms of like net approval. Bernie was number one and Slotkin was number two. So there's that. Hopefully she is, this is meant as a fundraiser. And so if we wouldn't be trying to spit at anybody, where the idea is to get somebody who has some appeal to the voters, to Democrats in particular. And I think she probably does have that, but I don't want to overstate that we did much consideration that. We were thrilled to have a U.S. Senator who was willing to lend her name to our fundraising efforts.
Well, I mentioned that.
No, I just, and perhaps, in a different time, we would have a more considered approach to who we might bring in as speaker. We don't often even bring, people outside of this, our political universe here in Maryland and Montgomery County to speak. The circumstances here, required us to move quickly in rescheduling our event, and we were offered a speaker. We normally would have done this event on a weekend, but we're doing it on a Thursday because Slotkin is available. And really, it's a fundraiser, and it's not about her politics. It's not even about that Slotkin might be running for president. It's. We're.
I mean, do you think it's fair to say?
I take your view. I just want to present to the listening audience that her views didn't even come up in the discussion, and I don't think anyone knows whether she takes AIPAC money or not. I mean, she does. She does. Okay. She does take it. But Ed, let me just jump in because we don't want to spend all day on this. I never accepted AIPAC's endorsement. I don't know what that means. But I take your point. I'm not challenging your facts.
I just gave you the track AIPAC square, and I think the concern that we see from the Truth Out article is that it really feels like she's trying to have it both ways. On the one hand, just like you just said, doesn't accept their endorsement, but takes money that they've funneled into her campaign. She says she would vote against selling offensive weapons to Israel. But then when a vote came up and it was only for a fraction to stop a fraction of the distribution of arms, she didn't make that vote because she was on the Late Show with Colbert, right? She missed the vote so she could be filmed. She could record. So it doesn't look good. And I think this, and I'm not, this isn't personal to you. I think the sense among so many people is that the party really doesn't have the vote. The party, as demonstrated by the electeds, really don't have a core. They don't have a moral center. The idea even that you express, well, this is a fundraiser, suggests that the people who give money, they're going to get what they want in the end. I mean, I think that's what we all, people who give $5, $10 to Bernie Sanders, they know what they're getting with Bernie, and people who give $50,000 to a PAC that funnels the money to Elissa Slotkin, they know what they're going to get too.
It's $130 for a ticket to our gala, and $200, I think, for the VIP, for the reception with the Slotkin. But she'll speak at the gala, so you get to hear her either way. Yeah, it's not. We don't have. We have a forum and a founders level membership, so you can give 500 or 1,000. You end up with tickets to this event and other things, but nobody gives us more than that. And again, we don't have a role in policy, so it's irrelevant anyway. We're out there every 2 years trying to elect Democrats, and that's what that money goes to.
Well, Ed, again, thanks so much for coming on board. We've got other topics to get to. I don't want to belabor this. Do you have something else you want to add?
That's my flavor of Democrat coming up there. So
okay, so right, you and I have discussed this quite a bit, and
I would be in New York canvassing for him, but for the fact that we have to, the timing of the gala makes that impossible.
I have canvassed for Zoran Mamdani, so I have a question for you on more than one occasion, as a matter of fact. So here's and you alluded to this, or you said this. As an MCDCC representative, you are actually required to support all Democrats in general elections. How
Correct.
come that doesn't hold for Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer?
They are not party members in that respect. They are, they're registered Democrats, but they are not subject to the same rules that committee members are.
Wouldn't it be the right thing for them to abide by those same rules, especially when they've often invoked them to insist that people need to support Democrats in other contexts?
Yeah, and not just vote blue, no matter who, but support blue. It's incredibly disappointing that they're not doing that. In other contexts, here in Maryland, we had, and I defended him at the state Central Committee, to the state party, their credentials committee, a local Central Committee member, not Montgomery County member, but who had canvassed for another Democrat, but who was running as a write-in against a Democrat who had ran a Rundle in Annapolis, I guess, a city election, who had been recently arrested for beating his wife. There's I can get that Cuomo is also a Democrat, but he's not running as a Democrat. And I think, as committee members, we would be obliged to support Mamdani in New York.
He's the Democratic nominee. I mean, that's the bottom line. He won the primary.
Yeah. And Cuomo is even worse because he's happy to have Trump support and a lot of his donors. And for me, it was a clear choice. Do you think,
Ed, do you think, because you've talked about how you see Mamdani and maybe a few others as the future of the Democratic Party, could you understand my skepticism given the fact that, again, the two most powerful Democrats who were both elected by consensus, we just mentioned them, Jeffries and Schumer, from the same state, by the way, don't support him? I mean, doesn't that suggest that the party, rather than moving towards Mamdani, is going to do everything possible either to pull Mamdani in the way they have to a significant degree done with AOC, or if not, and he somehow manages to prevail, to keep him as like a distant moon of Jupiter while they maintain huge mass far away from him?
I guess the question for us, the larger question for us, is whether people like Mamdani and Sanders are, unicorns in their way. Bernie running for president and Mamdani for mayor of New York. I mean, we had a Democratic socialist endorsed candidate here in Montgomery County in 2018 and elected county executive and won the primary. I don't know if that would have happened in a two-person race, but he did win the primary that we had. There's certainly a core base of support, and we need to, for folks out on the left, and we need to broaden that.
What's interesting about the comparison
is more popular in New York than Schumer and Jeffries are.
No question. But what's interesting about the comparison with Mark Elrich is that it's certainly possible and maybe even probable that if there had been some kind of ranked choice voting, Mark would have lost the primary. It's the opposite in New York. Mamdani did win with ranked choice voting. Clearly, the significant majority of Democrats preferred him. Now, he was running against a very unpopular Democratic front runner, so that kind of throws a little bit of a monkey wrench into the analysis.
There was a big field of Democrats, and none of them, other than Eric Adams, had a real big profile in the city. But Mamdani's politics rose above all, and
this is true.
I think that really bodes well.
Are you concerned that Mamdani might not prevail with Eric Adams dropping out? You see what had been an over 20-point percentage lead in the Quinnipiac poll is now down to 13%, still double digits, still significant. But my understanding is that if every Sliwa voter became a Cuomo voter, Cuomo would have the lead. So is there a little bit of nervousness there?
Sure. As I said, I would be up in New York right now working for Mamdani if I didn't have responsibilities here that I unfortunately was elected to. I have to fulfill them. But yeah, no, I have a lot of concern, and it will be as I started this conversation at the very beginning, there's still a real battle within the party for direction, and people like Jeffries and Schumer understand that they need to raise money to win elections nationwide. Mamdani, and Elrich before him functioned under the public financing, and were able to max out, the money they could raise for that. And that's fabulous, but that's a system that doesn't work everywhere.
I'm going to push back on that, Ed, because the policies that Mamdani has enunciated are actually far more popular than the policies that, and it's hard to know what their policies are because they really don't seem to stand for much. Yeah. No, but to the extent we know that what Schumer and Jeffries do support, which appears to be Israel at all costs and limited regulations, limited tax hikes on the billionaire class, kind of a continuing this, not for Medicare for all at all, for supporting for-profit healthcare providers. Those policies are far less popular among the American public than Mamdani's are.
I'm with you. The question, as I was getting at, is where does the money come to run campaigns? There are people, and Elrich, established, 12 years on the council, really a course of people who, loved his values and is willing to stand up, even losing votes 8-1. And we were able to raise, I worked inside the campaign. We were able to raise money to get to that level, to max out our fundraising and get the literature out that we needed to do. And up against millions of dollars of television advertisements. There's a limit to what money can get you, and those millions of dollars of television advertisements have had a lot of impact. I could see it when we were counting the mail-in votes. There were people who had crossed out, had Eldridge's name on there and then crossed them out, and put in other people's names, either Reamer or Blair. And it was because they clearly, after having filled out their ballot before they mailed it, saw ads attacking Eldridge.
So here's my answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
Schumer and Jeffries, if their true concern was the well-being of the American public, have enough juice to push aggressively against that. Certainly, Barack Obama could have pushed aggressively against that and said, you know what, we've got, I'm not going to call it a vast right-wing conspiracy the way Hillary Clinton did, but we definitely have an interlocking group of billionaires who control media, who control tech, who control, communications in this country. What we have to do together is look at candidates, see what their records are. Have they fought for you? Are they standing in support of what's important to you or not? I think Barack Obama could have done that.
You're right. The pushback I'll say is that a lot of voters don't look that closely at it, and they're getting stuff on TikTok and TV commercials, and they're not, they're not seeing what you and I see over a 4-year cycle.
Ed, well, let me say it this way. The Cuomo spokesperson said we're seeing a decisive shift in the polls. Now, of course, that's a very self-serving remark. But this is from Polymarket this morning. The highest Mamdani's been in the odds is at 91%. And this is after, this morning, this is after that poll dropped. He's just about back to 90% after a little blip. So we're both nervous. We both want Mamdani to win. There's concerns. But it looks like the betting markets have basically settled back to Mamdani as a very clear favorite.
Yeah, and he is. I'd be stunned if he doesn't win, but it's not. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Cuomo pulls this off.
All right. I'm very critical of the Democratic Party for many reasons. I think their policies are bad. I think that they're corrupt. I think they make things worse. But we're looking at a president who is, almost, and I've heard this, I think he does kind of fall in line with what we've seen in terms of, increasing security state, surveillance state, the torture that George W. Bush countenanced, and so on. So we've seen things get worse and worse. The crackdown on immigration, Obama being the great deporter. But again, Trump takes it to the next and worst level. We're seeing this especially in the streets of Chicago. I want to play this video for you, Ed, not to speak so much as a Democrat, but as an American, and what you think we can, if anything, do to try to rein in this, what I would call lawless administration.
Neighbors like Ebony Watson says they ducked for cover as they heard several flashbangs go off.
They was terrible.
Now, let me start this from the beginning. I'm sorry. We were not quite at the beginning there.
Neighbors like Ebony Watson says they ducked for cover as they heard several flashbangs go off.
They was terrified. The kids was crying. People was screaming. They looked very distraught. I was out there crying when I seen the little girl come around the corner. Because they was bringing the kids out too. Had them zip tied to each other. That's all I kept asking.
So let me stop that. So that's where the eyewitness, we heard the statement that there were children zip tied. She saw it. She's describing it.
Where's the human? One of them literally laughed. He was standing right here. He said, them kids.
Watson says.
So one of the ICE agents, she said, they're children. He says, F them kids.
Military-style vans were used to separate parents from their children. Other neighbors say they saw agents destroying property to get in the building.
And they had a big 15-inch chainsaw with a round blade on it, cutting this fence down. We're under siege. We're being invaded by our own military.
The FBI did confirm this morning that they did help the U.S. Border Patrol carry out a targeted immigration enforcement operation in this area, and they say they have been supporting these efforts at the direction of the U.S. Attorney General.
Right, and a number of, I don't have it in that video, Ed, but a number of the arrestees were released. They were found to be U.S. citizens. They had been manhandled, mistreated, thrown around. And it turns out there were no warrants against them. There were no. They were either legally in this country or, in fact, American citizens. This is very, very scary stuff. What can we?
People who returned to their apartments had, that everything had been thrown out in the street. I mean, it's horrific. There's been a right-wing conspiracy really over, decades now, and involved including putting ideologues and racists into policing, and in this cycle, I think we're seeing a lot of those same people, or the same type of people, moving into ICE. So the people on the ground who are doing these things, it's not even Trump and the agency. I mean, it's just incredible, despicably, behavior by the agents who are on the ground there, and with no regard whatsoever for the people they're confronting.
One of the really disappointing aspects for me is that some of the, again, more conservative or MAGA members, say, of Halitics, commenters there, don't appear to be troubled by this. I think some of the information they're getting obviously is just flat out wrong, maybe from Newsmax or Fox, and I'm not, I'm just guessing that that's where it came from. But this comment was, you have a problem with criminals being arrested, and I'm like, but they weren't even. I mean, many weren't criminals, and the ones who were being targeted, although there's this claim that they were members of some horrible gang, it was more just people who might have not been legally in the country.
Right. I mean, we have crimes and we have misdemeanors, and coming into this country without documentation is a misdemeanor. It's mostly a civil violation, but to the extent that it has any cognate in criminal law, it's a misdemeanor. So they're not really criminals, and to describe them that way is upsetting, and
it's very problematic. And you know what else, Ed? It's not where most American people are. Actually, while Trump's crackdown, or his promise to take a harder line against immigration and immigrants was more popular than Harris's position, which was also, as far as I could tell, the same: build a wall. She made fun of Trump for not building a wall at one point. Americans don't like what we're seeing. We're not happy with this. Are you seeing from your perch an effective response from Democrats? And if they are providing a response, is it getting out?
So the response has to be on the ground. It's got to be there are groups that exist, that are, citizens coming together that are trying to protect their neighbors. And that's really where this has to happen. The elected Democrats, at least at the federal level, have no voice right now. They have no power. We're in a shutdown, and maybe they will move the needle, but mostly they're focusing on healthcare right now. So I think that's where that compromise will fall. And maybe we'll move the needle on getting the Epstein files released. But I mean, at the state level, we have heroes like J.B. Pritzker who are doing what, at least claim to be doing what they can to support their neighbors, the immigrants there. Even they have limited, power to direct what an individual officer might be doing on the ground there. So there will be state police and such doing things that the governor might not approve of.
By the way, real quick from Splash Ken in the chat, many of the quote illegals weren't even here illegally until the rules were changed. I believe that's absolutely correct. So excellent point. And again, it just kind of underlines the cruelty.
Yeah. No, they were following what the Biden administration set up to come into and apply for either refugee status or other status here, and now they're, their lives are being torn up and upside down, and some of them deported, across the world to places they've never been, which is, to say it shocks the conscience is just wildly understating it. I can't imagine that. I could never have imagined that happening.
Well, even though there are commenters and certainly many diehard Trump supporters and I guess rock rib Republicans who are not troubled by these images, they do not reflect the majority. And as you can see, this is from America's Voice, which is actually kind of a third way centrist group. They are not, people like me who are just horrified. They're looking at it from a political standpoint. They're saying that support for Trump is declining when it comes to this issue because people don't want to see masked ICE agents violently detaining U.S. citizens, longtime residents, and the like. They make the point that the Democrats need to speak. And see, I think this gets to, and again, I always bring it back to the Democrats because I think we know how bad the Republicans are. We need a unified opposition that speaks powerfully and with a moral clarion voice, Ed. And again, I guess we're not saying that it's hard to beat something with nothing. There are some good Democrat, people like, I guess, Pritzker, like you said. But again, why can't the party come together?
It's a lot of issues like that. It's a profound question. You go back 20 years and Bernie Sanders was worried about immigration to this country, immigrants taking jobs from Americans.
But isn't that a legitimate worry? Can't we do both? Can't we say, yes, we need to?
Yeah. I mean, it is a legitimate worry, and it's a tough needle to thread. But we Democrats writ large need to find a way to do it.
Ed, you mentioned, we're going to move on now, but continue with something you mentioned, the Epstein files. And this may be why Speaker Johnson has refused, at least as far as I know, even into today, to swear in Congresswoman elect Adelita Grijalva from Arizona. So let's play this clip. Here's Democracy Now!
To another guest to join you. From Tucson, Arizona, Democrat Adelita Grijalva of Arizona won a special election 2 weeks ago in Arizona's 7th Congressional District. She'll replace her late father, former Congressmember Raul Grijalva, in Congress. After she's sworn in, Grijalva is expected to become the 218th vote needed to force the Justice Department to release more of its files on the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. On Tuesday, CNN's Manu Raju questioned House Speaker Mike Johnson about why she hasn't been sworn in.
Earlier this year, you swore in 2 Republican members during a pro forma session. So why not swear in Adelita Grijalva, who was elected 2 weeks ago during a pro forma session? Does it have to do with her 218th signature on the discharge petition, the Epstein discharge?
No, it has nothing to do with that at all. We will swear her in when everybody gets back. It's a ceremonial duty.
I want to stop there because I don't want to play more of Johnson. I really want to hear him, to be honest with you. I don't. But if it's ceremonial, this is what I don't understand. Well, a couple things. Does it even matter if they're not in session and they're not voting on anything? Does this matter? It seems to, but help me out here, Ed.
It sure matters in lots of ways. The people in that district right now are not represented by anyone in Congress. And there's a lot of things an elected member of Congress does, even during a shutdown. So that's...
Would there be a vote? Could there be a vote during the shutdown? Say, have there been votes that she hasn't been able to participate in because of this?
There are votes in the Senate. The House has been shut. Johnson took the House out of session, so there have been no votes in the House. But that gets to the question: what would happen if there is a negotiations for real and to end this shutdown, and a vote has to be taken in the House? When does he swear in Representative Grijalva, before or after that?
I'm worried about that. To me, this is one of the scariest things we've seen. Certainly what's happening in Chicago is horrific. There are supposed to be safeguards. There are supposed to be courts where you can appeal to vindicate your rights if the police violate them. But if the opposition party is in control of Congress and simply refuses to allow an elected individual to be seated, then that seems to me that's proof positive there's no democracy.
It's a deeply flawed democracy. Yeah. And I think Republicans have been working very hard against it for a long time now. That's not new. And it's one of the reasons I'm proud to be a Democrat. I mean, I'm honored to be doing this work. I think the Republican Party represents a tremendous threat to our democracy, a tremendous threat to the climate and the environment in this world. And we have to, we're in multiple emergencies going on right now, and we have to respond urgently and get people in power who are willing to take action. And yeah, that for my money, it takes a Democrats who are willing to do things that Democrats have not done in the past.
240-242-5646. We just got a few more minutes left, but I'll take a call. I'll take your call if you call in now. We do have a number of folks watching according to the YouTube number. So if any of you want to join us, please do. Also, a number of comments in the chat, which I appreciate as well. Thank you. Nothing there that I think I need to remark on. Again, 240-242-5646. So willful obstruction of Congress. We'll see if Mike Johnson does in fact swear in Adelita. I was going to say, I get so confused because there's Gallego, who's
right.
What's his? There's
Gallego.
Ruben Gallego, Raul Grijalva. That's the Ruben Gallego, Raul Grijalva,
and a terrific successor to his legacy. So
Adelita.
And another vote, I hope, in the Medicare for
I'm
all.
not a fan of Gallego. Ed gave an encomium there, slipped in his encomium to his party. Anybody who watches this program for any length of time knows I don't share that positive view of the party, but I certainly want to push back on it. I appreciate at this point, I appreciate him coming on board. But I do want to urge you as a person who represents the party, recognize there, and you know it, how much dissatisfaction there's, not just among non-Democrats, but people who are still in the tent.
Yeah, we hear it everything. People want to know what Democrats are doing, and we're out there.
You don't have much of an answer.
In terms of responding to Trump, there's a limit to what electeds can do. And here in Maryland, we're now facing a situation where Trump keeps threatening to pull the money for the Key Bridge rebuild. We rely on the federal government for so much. Because of the way the tax structure is set up, state taxes are just a fraction of what the federal government collects from Marylanders. So, we have to work with the federal government in lots of ways. We can't declare a secession from the federal government. But there's a limited ability to interfere with the federal government too, in this case where they're acting lawlessly.
Is the perception that many of us have, including myself, that the Democratic Party is no longer the party of working class Americans, is no longer the party of peace, is no longer the environmental party? Is that fair?
Is it fair to say that the party is not that?
Yes.
No, it's not. It's definitely not. We still are the party. The party is who makes it up. The people who vote for us, especially where we have closed elections like Maryland and New York, closed primaries. That's the party, and it's up to the voters to choose who leads the party. Who leads us, who represents us in government. they are not the party, but they do make policy for the party. And I shouldn't say for the party, they make policy for their jurisdictions and for the country. And it's up to the voters to make the changes they want to see if the people that representing them aren't doing what they want them to do. I think by and large, the party does move the needle strongly in terms of direction for labor and working people, and for definitely on the environment. I mean, what Biden was trying to achieve, and unfortunately is being rolled back by Trump, was groundbreaking, and still not enough. But that's true all across the world. The report cards are showing that every country is falling short of its environmental goals. China is actually the one doing the best in terms of, like some incredible percentage, like 80-90% of development in wind and solar around the world is in China. For all the complaint that Trump has about the windmills in Germany and Scotland and all that, the Western world has a lot of catching up to do.
Well, it's easier if you just don't even go to the voters at all. I mean, one of the big problems we have now is because we have kind of limited democracy. There's tremendous pandering to voters. There's promises made that are often betrayed. Communist Party can just simply say in China, we're doing this. And in fact, their wholehearted embrace of solar energy, particularly, makes a lot of sense, even from a economic and efficiency standpoint, because now it is cheaper to generate electricity from solar rather than from fossil fuels. Excuse me. For
sure. Democracy is very messy. And
especially when it's a corrupt democracy that's really more of a oligopoly, a cacostocracy. You even acknowledged that. You said, hey, they got to raise money. Yeah. So even though most voters want this, they got to raise money by doing what the billionaires want. They got to make sure that what they say isn't too offensive to the lords of media, or they'll get slammed on CNN and Fox. So that's not democracy.
You and I lived through the 70s and 80s where Democrats were getting wiped out in presidential elections. I mean, barely winning a state or two. And Bill Clinton, for better or worse, changed that. And the Democratic Party is still...
Well, both Clinton and Obama campaigned to the left of where they actually governed.
Right.
And there were a lot of problems with Carter, and certainly in terms of the Carter... that some were of his making, I would say some were not. I personally look back on Jimmy Carter more fondly than many do, including many on the left. That said, even at that point, the media had already started to shift to become more, we were not there was not the CBS News of Walter Cronkite in the late 70s.
Yeah. No, it's been corporatized in ways that, I wish we'd been able to push back against back then. I wish people had seen the danger, and the loss of local media has been devastating. I mean, it's always amusing when you see on social media all the people on the right complaining about the liberal media, and I'm like, what do they mean? The nation? They mean democracy?
They're talking about Halitics. They're talking about me and my 400 subscribers. I mean, well, I guess we're not liberal. You accused me. You said I'm not even progressive now. I'm left. I'm a leftist. Okay,
you're
that's fair. Say again.
I think you're post-left, but that's
far left. And some issues, it depends. People often take me to task for my supposedly retrograde views on cultural issues, right? So
no, that's the post-leftist part. But
I gotcha.
Okay.
All right, Dad. Anything else? We're going to give you the final word. We're past the hour. Again, greatly appreciate your joining me, and I want you to have a good weekend. But any final word?
I mean, stay in the fight, because as I say, the party can at best amplify the efforts of people on the ground in resisting what's going on and in voting. We will have a gubernatorial election here next year, which could be a tight one if Larry Hogan throws his hat in the ring, as everyone expects. and in Montgomery County in particular. I mean, that's where, unfortunately, Hogan was able to get the margin he needed to beat Ben Jealous 8 years ago. So,
well, we here at Halitics are pretty much pretty certain to endorse Andy Ellis, the Green Party likely Green. He hasn't yet, but likely Green Party candidate for.
I expect he would. I mean, I like Andy.
I think, and Ed, I promise you the last word.
I have a different view than you do on how we wield power, how we build power and wield it. But in this system, we have a first past the post system and a presidential system that requires getting more than 50% of the vote to be able to do anything. And that's where Democrats, and of course in the Senate, it's more than 50%. And that's where we got railroaded by Sinema and Manchin last time around. But that requirement
is actually working now if Democrats will hold firm against Trump on that.
I understand why some Democrats, I don't believe for a second that Manchin and Sinema were the only ones who wanted to protect the filibuster.
Right. Or who wanted to take down the Build Back Better provisions that were more progressive.
No, I think they were pretty much unique in that. Maybe the Senate has gone to the left since then, but I think the party has moved even the electeds have moved pretty far to the left compared to where they were 10 years ago.
I don't agree. I don't share that view. I don't think of Cory Booker. If they had moved to the left, then Schumer wouldn't be the minority leader at this time in the Senate. Ed, I promise you last word, and I'm going to stand by it. But I'm going to give you
thanks for the invitation.
A word of advice which you can respond to, and that is what I think so many of us want to see in the Democratic Party. Is we want to see a vibrant, progressive left flank that is willing, indeed, maybe eager even, to criticize other members of the party. We certainly see that from the center right, the Schumers, the Jeffries, who, take every opportunity to stick a dig into Mamdani. We want to see the AOCs really go after leadership in a pointed way. We want to see a recognition that the party has taken a very wrong path. And until we see that, I don't think we will have any real faith in any Democrat.
That's fair. I was kind of restricted in what I could do or say as a Central Committee member, but it was appalling to see that only Dean Phillips was out there calling out Biden's campaign for presidency. As just being just a terrible and misguided idea. We need more criticism from folks who are allowed to give it. And maybe the idea is also to change the rules for party members. But again, as I said, we weren't elected for that, chosen for that kind of stuff.
Hey, really appreciate that acknowledgement, though. That's big. I appreciate that very much. Ed, thanks so much for joining us. Wish you a great weekend. And everyone watching, thank you for being part of Halitics. One last time, if you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Please like, comment. Any interaction with this video helps us beat the algorithm. And have a great weekend.